Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. I'm not gay. This video series is about why the Golden Rule and the Greatest Commandment sum up the Bible, and why the Bible itself is written in a way that's confusing, and therefore it is not a holy book. Because God said through the prophets, according to that same book, that God is not the author of disorder, but of peace. And there are so many Christian denominations in the world. So, here in part 1, we're going to talk about Genesis chapter 11. Right after chapter 10, where it's talking about who's related to who, there's chapter 11, and in the first section, it talks about the Tower of Babel. So people built a tower out of brick, right, which is similar to, the Freemasons with their trowel, okay, which is a tool that's used for spreading mortar on a brick. And they didn't build it out of stone, which symbolizes the people, it symbolizes the principles, it symbolizes the spirit of the righteous people, the righteous and not necessarily Jews. Keep in mind that Noah was not a Jew, right? He was before Abraham. So was Cush. So was Adam. So was Abel. So it's not logical to assume that the story is centered around the Jews. It's centered around the righteous. And the Jews are used as an example. You see that in Ezekiel, and we're going to get into Ezekiel later on, not in this playlist, but in the next playlist I'm going to make. You see that in Isaiah. They both very much have harsh words for the Jews. And Ezekiel says they're being used as an example. That they're going to waste away, right, the masses of Jews to be an example for the world. He calls them obstinate and stubborn. It says they'll be an object of reproach and scorn, a taunt. And that's what it says in Ezekiel. I'm not racist. Whether you're Jew or Gentile, you can rally and obey God through me. Let's go back to the tower here. In Genesis 11, it says that God saw them building this blasphemous tower, which symbolizes the building of humanity, what humans worship. Right? The tower, in many ways, is a sign of the beast. They were concerned with self-directing, like Freemasons in popular culture are said to be concerned with. They weren't concerned with obeying God, and they spoke the same language, which was the language of rebellion. That is the main and simplest way to interpret. There's other ways to interpret. Some people interpret God as in the story as not the one true God, but that's not a straightforward way to interpret the Bible. That's a complicated way. One thing's for sure, that when you interpret it as God is the God, of the Bible, when you interpret it that way, you have to do a lot of deciphering. And that's because of Genesis chapter 11, that's because of Isaiah, that's because of Jeremiah 8, and we'll get into that in later parts in this series. So in chapter 11, you see that they're building this tower, and God confounds them. And he says, I'm going to confuse them, because they all spoke one language. They all understood when they were talking to each other about spiritual matters. So he said he's going to confuse them by making it so that they don't understand the spiritual language of God. They don't speak the same spiritual language that God speaks. And you see people talk about how the word is, inspired by God, or that it has the Spirit of God. And a lot of people into sorcery and the occult, they say that words have power, magic spells and spelling. So it's important to note that the Tower of Babel has everything to do with the Bible. In fact, the word Bible is like the word Babel. And when we look at what the words mean in the Bible, the names of people, Moses means to draw out. At times you'll come across words where it says, this word is like that word, and it will line right up. In fact, we see that it is admitted time and time again that the word Babel connects to the word Balal, which is like the demon Bilal. And the word Bilal means to mix up, to confuse, right? To be confused. Bilal. It's a verb. And this is one of many examples in the Bible. I am not the expert on Hebrew, nor do I intend to ever be the expert on Hebrew. Because Hebrew is a human language. It's not a divine language. The language of God is more like, the sun and the heavens declaring the glory of God. Human languages are human languages. So by now you should know that I'm right? And as you connect the word Babel to Bilal, you should be able to connect the word Babel to Bible and to Babel. Baal being the main adversary of God in the Bible. And notice that there were different factions of Jews arguing with each other. False prophets arguing with actual prophets. There were the Pharisees arguing with Jesus. So who wrote the Bible? It was the liars and their scribes. And on top of that, the Bible refers to books that are not in the Bible. One of them, I believe, is the book of Jasher. It's not in the Bible. So the Bible is incomplete. What happens when you do not complete something, yet you have references in that book that refer to other books? There's references in that something that refers to other somethings. You're confusing things. So no matter how you slice it, and we'll get to that more in part 2, the Bible is a book made by people who were wittingly or otherwise confusing people. So what is the essence of it? What nullifies the confusion? Well, 3 things. 1, the golden rule. 2, the greatest commandment. 3, Proverbs 16:12. Right? The throne is established in righteousness and focused moral intensity. Right? And it's a greater form of righteousness. And some people are approaching righteous. Some people are somewhat righteous. Some people are following the most righteous. But the most righteous has focused moral intensity. The Lord Almighty, moral might. Might in regards to righteousness. Righteous might. And so that is the order of God. There is no scripture in all of the Bible that contradicts that. And common sense, to great wisdom, should make that very clear to you.